I'm David Dennis. I'm the chairman of the Sedgwick County Board of County Commissioners, and I'm the commissioner for District 3, which you're lucky enough to be in my district right now, and it's everything going west from here. On behalf of all of our Board of County Commissioners, I want to welcome you and thank you very much for coming to our meeting tonight. I'd also like to introduce Commissioner Michael O'Donnell, who is in the audience with us this evening, Commissioner Jim Howe, and Commissioner Lacey Cruz. Commissioner Pete Meitzner is a little ill this evening, so he sends his regrets. Last month, the 5 commissioners and I, or 4 other commissioners and I, voted to temporarily prohibit any leases, not actually leases, but development of leases for wind and solar operations in Sedgwick County. And we did that so that our staff could have time to do the research on land use and to gain public input and to come back to us by August the 12th, no later than August 12th, for a recommendation on what we're going to do going forward. And tonight's public forum will aid us in the creation of the zoning recommendations for Sedgwick County. And we understand that this topic is passionate to people on both sides of the issue, and it's very important that we hear both sides of the issue tonight. Tonight, if you would like to speak, make sure that you've signed up at the table in the back of the room. As we go through the agenda tonight, we're going to first start with a review of the current environment. Hear from Dale Miller. He's in the middle. He's the head of our planning department for Sedgwick County. You're going to hear from Mark Clark over on this end, and he is our interim county appraiser. And you're going to hear from Justin Wagner, who's on the far side, and he's our legal expert on land use here. And then our public information officer, Kate, where'd Kate go? Oh, she's right here, I'm sorry. Kate Flavin will moderate public comment and the questions as we go through tonight. We're going to give each speaker one opportunity to speak, and you'll have somewhere around 3 minutes if you're wrapping up. We're not real tough. She's not real tough on us. If you have questions, that's why we have 3 of our experts here tonight, Dale, Mark, and Justin, and they'll be able to hopefully answer specific questions that you have. If not, we can get back to you later. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dale Miller, and then Mark Clark will do a little presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I was asked to speak about the current zoning process that is in place should an application be made for wind or solar energy generation facility. And as the chairman noted, currently the county has a moratorium regarding those facilities, so no such application could be made at this time. What I'm going to describe is the zoning process as if there were not a moratorium, and the way that the regulations currently would be applied if we were taking applications in. The way the county regulates land use is through a process known as zoning. A zoning code is adopted as a means to try and ensure compatible land use relationships between different ownerships. As part of the zoning code adoption process, every parcel of land located within the county has a given specific zoning designation. For example, most of the county is zoned RR, rural residential, but there are 19 different zoning districts in the zoning code that are applicable across the jurisdiction. Each zoning district contains a list of land uses that are permitted by right and uses that are permitted only with conditional use approval. Uses permitted by right are those uses that someone conducts on the land without having to obtain additional approvals through the Planning Commission or the County Commission. For example, single-family homes and agricultural activities are allowed by right in all of the county's residential districts. However, each zoning district also contains a list of other uses that may be permitted within a given district only with public review, such as a multifamily complex or a major utility. The conditional use review is required because of the extraordinary effect the use might have on surrounding property, such as increased traffic, increased noise, or lighting over what is typically found in the zoning district. Such uses are called conditional uses and require public review and approval. The conditional use review process requires public notice in the newspaper, mailed individual notice to property owners within 1,000 feet of the perimeter of the application area, and a public hearing before the Planning Commission and possibly before the County Commission. Applications for conditional uses have to have a scaled site plan that shows the location of all improvements and describes the main characteristics of the proposed use, such as maximum height, setbacks from property lines or off-site structures, lighting, and access roads. Citizens are provided an opportunity to speak for or against a conditional use application at the Planning Commission. If the Planning Commission approves an application, neighbors have the ability to file protest petitions within 14 days of the final decision of the Planning Commission and force the application to be reviewed by the County Commission. If no protest petitions are filed, the approval of the Planning Commission is final. From the filing deadline through the end of the protest period is approximately 54 days, so it moves rather quickly. If there are protests filed, then the total time period is increased to about 90 days by the time you get the County Commission hearing included. The Planning Commission and the County Commission have the ability to approve or deny conditional use applications. If an application were to be approved, reasonable development standards can be required to address known or perceived impacts on neighboring properties. Some of the development standards that could be included would be establishing a boundary for the use, establishing a maximum height, a maximum number of turbines if we were talking about a wind energy facility, maximum amount of kilowatt generation capacity, spacing between the turbines, maximum numbers, the speed of rotation, and other mitigations to try and reduce reflection, lighting, drainage, and those sorts of things. With respect to wind or solar energy farms, those two uses are currently defined by the zoning code as a major utility. A major utility use requires conditional use approval in every zoning district in the county except the Air Force Base District. The Air Force Base District has only been applied to the McConnell Air Force Base area, so essentially any application that is not on McConnell will require public hearing and conditional use review procedures. The moratorium that the County Commission established will allow staff to review the existing regulations and, if necessary, develop specific development standards that would help to guide the Planning Commission and County Commission in evaluating any applications that would come in the future and would better protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Thank you.
I was asked to speak regarding the current environment for renewable energy resources and technologies in Sedgwick County. Presently, there are 31 lease documents that have been filed with the Register of Deeds impacting 61 parcels in Sedgwick County. Looking at the map, we can see there are 11 in yellow. There are 11 parcels that have wind leases. In blue, you can see that there are 27 parcels that have solar leases. 2 parcels have both wind and solar leases, and right here is 21 parcels for transmission easement. So there are 34 leases that have been secured with the Next Era Energy Resources LLC and 27 leases that have been secured with the Invenergy Solar Development North America LLC. The transmission easements coming out of Kingman County across the western Sedgwick County border and proceeding easterly between 13th Street and 21st Street are for the Gen tie line. Generation tie line basically brings the power out of the farm, out of the wind farms in Nenaskaw and Pratt counties. The Nenaskaw wind farm is in Pratt, and Kingman Wind Energy 1 and Wind Energy 2 are in Kingman. So remember that the these farms, they're basically closed systems. They are not tied to the power grid. So the gen tie line basically runs 7.6 miles, and it ends at the Buffalo Flats switching station that is owned by Westar. There, it is tied into the power grid and is for distribution. This is important here. Land dedicated to wind turbines or solar arrays will be classified as commercial real property with assessment ratios of 25%. Usually, we will delineate out on a parcel about an acre for the siting of a turbine. Many people in western Sedgwick County have land devoted to ag use. This will in no way invalidate your ag use. Yes, the portion of the land that is delineated out for commercial real property purposes for siting that turbine will be taxable at 25%, but the rest of your parcel will still maintain its ag use. The controlling statute for the renewable energy resource and technology exemption, for which wind farms are eligible, pertains not only to wind farms but also solar farms, geothermal, biomass, hydropower, etc., is KSA 79-201-11. The statute was amended in 2015. Prior to 2015, any wind farm was exempt for life. It would never pay tax. The legislature changed that by amending the statute in 2015. The exemption now is a 10-year exemption. After 10 years, that property comes back to the tax roll. It is commercial, industrial machinery and equipment. It's personal property. Yes, it depreciates, but it will come back to the tax roll. Exemption applications filed with the county appraiser on or after January 1st, 2017, pursuant to KSA 79-201-11, are eligible for an exemption of 10 years, immediately following the taxable year in which construction or installation of such property is completed for all property actually and regularly used predominantly to produce electricity utilizing renewable energy resources and technology. You can tell that an attorney wrote that. It's a mouthful. But going back to our the transmission easement, that gen tie line, that exemption application came into the appraiser's office prior to January 1st, 2017, and therefore it is permanently exempt. And so whatever happens, if anything happens in Sedgwick County, that application is going to come into our office after, of course, January 1st, 2017, and it will be exempt for only 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, so now that we've had a brief overview, we're going to open this forum up for public comment. And we want to hear from you, obviously. We want to know what you think should be done here in Sedgwick County. And as Chairman stated, we're going to allow everyone the opportunity to speak for about 3 minutes. We've got a little flashcard down here for a 30-second warning and then a stop sign. So we've got that for you. And we're going to start off with Dave Kirkbride. If you could come to the podium and share your comments.
My name is Dave Kirkbride, and I'm the chair of the Kansas Sierra Club. I live here in Wichita. I'm also the major owner of a 128-year-old ranch southwest of Medicine Lodge. The motto of the Sierra Club is to explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. 15 years ago, we had very little wind resources in Kansas, and very few wind farms. Now we have quite a few, and we're very happy to see that. We believe that solar and wind are the energy producers of the future, and Kansas is in a great position to be one of the largest producers of renewable energy in the country. And so we favor the use of wind and solar. Thank you.
Can you tell us what CR stands for? Oh, I'm sorry, he said CR. So what was the name of the club you said?
Kansas Sierra Club.
Okay.
The Sierra Club was established in 1892. It's the oldest environmental organization in the United States.
Thank you.
Do you have turbines on that land down there?
Do I have what?
Is there turbines on that land?
Not on mine, but I'd like to have some on my land.
Next is Kent Rowe.
Hello, panelists and commissioners. My name is Kent Rowe. I am the conservation chairperson of the Kansas Sierra Club. I'm also former mayor of Longton, Kansas. I grew up in Elk and Greenwood counties. We were cattle raisers, and we love our beautiful Kansas prairies. There was a time in which all this happened to take place, opposition to wind turbines in Butler County. There was all this consternation because of the aforementioned problems that Elk County needed these wind turbines, and we said, yeah, come on down. And now we have two wind farms in Elk County. They keep our schools going, roads and bridges and so forth. The very premise of which this moratorium was based is outlined in House Bill 2273 that went through Topeka. Well, we traveled up to Topeka and we heard this bill and testified. This bill was actually promulgated by Murray Coal, Peabody Coal, the fossil fuel industry, and had setbacks of 1.5 miles from transmission lines, any wind farm, 1.5 miles, and substations. But we did see fit to place 68 to 119 kVA lines in the front yards of people in the small neighborhoods of northeast Wichita. So the way in which these things take place is you can be fooled and cajoled in thinking that wind farms take its toll on birds. You want to hear how many birds are killed by fossil fuels as compared to wind farms? You want to hear it? 1 to 700. The fossil fuel industry kills 700 birds for every one bird that might be impacted by a wind farm. I'm sorry that that happens to that one bird, but that happens. We take everything we can to make sure that those flyaways are safeguarded. This is also, when we see solar and wind, it's also something that the inner city people have to suffer. People that live along the I-135 corridors, we've taken measurements on those kids, and they have to live in the soot and the noise and the things that go on. And what we're doing is we're promoting the smart grid. The smart grid has everything to do with wind and solar. And I'm sorry that people are frustrated by the change, but change will always come, and this change, it will be very, very good for Kansas. If you have any questions or want to confront me, please do so. I'm very happy to answer with perfect information, honest and truthful facts that we have on hand. Thank you.
I got a question. On your bird count, who did the study? The actual company that built the wind
No.
turbines?
This is Berkeley Lab, National Renewable Energy Laboratories, very good, credible academic parts. We also did K-State out here that I think one of my colleagues is going to testify, and on the prairie chickens. So, Bill,
We had two come into Elshie County.
2 wind farms, the Elk River. It's fairly sparsely populated, probably less than 20, 30,000. It makes a difference. Yeah, we like our land, we like our prairie, and we don't just count people, we count the wildlife and the ambience.
Okay, next up, we have Jennifer Connelly.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Connelly, and I want to explain power purchase agreements and the benefit to our community and how they play into what we're doing. Power purchase agreements is set up between the company of municipalities to purchase renewable energy. They're typically the system owner, which provides the financing, the developer who structures the deal and is responsible for the project. Typically, these are set up as long-term leases through Westar or Effergy. The advantage they provide upfront cost to the consumer and the ability to know how much that energy will cost them on an annual basis. So basically, municipalities or any other community can know what their projections are for the future between 20 and 25 years. The cost of and prices consideration is based on fuel costs and how much it'll cost to get the energy to its source. So basically, if you have a short step area where you're, say for instance, you're at the source or you have a solar project and that project is at the source, then you're not going to have transmission for fuel energy, and say take that into consideration when you're doing your projects. There are site projects such as Baldwin City, which will have a megawatt of solar array to be placed in their new public utilities building. And this is, and I have the information on Baldwin City, and I also, which we were bringing up, was Kingman Wind Energy, and I'll talk to you about that briefly. But basically, Baldwin City wants to of course, to get most of their energy from renewables, and this is their start. They directly will be working with Westar Energy on that, and this is very nice. And there's off-site, such as McPherson, who purchased a 37-megawatt system from Kingman Wind Energy. Through contracts with Westar, they will be considered a wholesaler to industrial businesses and other communities such as Chanute, and they're able to secure, by doing this, they were able to secure a contract. Basically, they're going to be a wholesaler, but they're going to get their energy through Kingman and the contract through Westar. So what this does for them is it promotes them being able to go into contract with businesses in their community, and also through to sell it to smaller towns. With solar, they can offset is placed at the community solar project. If the municipality has done their homework, this can move rather quickly. With wind, they typically are placed with off-site virtual power purchase agreements. Virtual power purchase agreements based on a pool. When the pool is large enough, they can start this project. This could be a huge advantage to our city and our county by attracting new businesses and young people to our community. Before considering a project, the village takes all concerns into consideration and does his homework on wildlife, community involvement, and environment and placement. And that's all. Thanks.
All right, and let me remind everyone, this is not an interactive dialogue, but if you do have questions for our county staff, we'd be happy to answer them as best we can or follow up with you at a later time. Our next speaker is Darcy Gray.
Fellow Kansans, thank you to the Sedgwick County Commission for being proactive and for setting aside this time for comment on the massive wind farm being built near Cheney State Park, as well as near towns and schools. As a resident of Andale, I contacted my elected officials and want to commend Commission Chairman David Dennis for his prompt response, informing me of this meeting. When it comes to the Pretty Prairie Wind Energy Center, the name alone might fool you. It would be more accurately called the Cheney State Park Wind Farm, as it is not near Pretty Prairie and is instead planned just north and northeast of the state park. It spans an area larger than the reservoir and includes more than 80 turbines, each 500 feet tall, taller than the Statue of Liberty. This massive wind farm should not be built near towns, schools, and a state park that gets 400,000 to 500,000 visitors per year, according to the Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism. That's the number they gave me when I called their headquarters. This is not only a concern for the people who live nearby, but for everyone from Kansas and beyond who enjoys our state parks. Why is it being built so close to concentrated populations of people and wildlife? I'm not opposed to wind energy, but the location doesn't make sense. I first tried contacting the Department of Wildlife and Parks through its website, but got no response. Their site lists numbers for their commissioners, so I called the Wildlife and Parks Commissioner that represents my area. He had, quote, nothing but good things to say about NextEra, the corporation building the wind farm. He told me he has turbines on his land near Pratt as part of another wind farm there. I was disappointed to learn that he's on their payroll and to listen to him dismiss any concerns I had. My family loves Cheney State Park and our peaceful area in the county. My son's a Boy Scout, and his den and pack enjoy activities there along with our family. We enjoy every aspect of our state park and have been captivated by the number of bald eagles there. There are numerous factors of concern demonstrating why this corporation isn't interested in the effects on multiple communities. The turbines aren't being built locally at Siemens in Reno County, according to a February 24th Hutchinson News article. The energy is being sold to a corporation in Boston, that's what the article stated. Of potentially 250 jobs for the project, only about 10 would be permanent, according to the article. The corporation constructing the project was entrusted to do its own wildlife study. The giant turbine's potential interference with meteorological radar and our forecasters' abilities to spot storms in the area. The construction and its maintenance for decades to come and effects on area roads and property. The corporation's obvious interest in using unzoned areas of the county, leaving local residents unprotected. Adverse health effects from this project, bright lights, shadow flicker, and noise, and how it will affect residents and the nearly 500,000 people visiting the state park each year. Transmission lines and where they will be located. Reports that the corporation has also leased Sedgwick County land. Citizens in the area are concerned about this project. I hope you can protect our quality of life from this wind farm, largely unregulated, that will forever change the view of a state park that hundreds of thousands of people enjoy every year. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next presenter is Dorothy Barnett.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to speak today. My name is Dorothy Barnett. I direct a Kansas-based nonprofit called the Climate and Energy Project. We've been working in Kansas for 12 years. We advocate for a just and equitable transition to a clean energy economy. One of our projects is called the Clean Energy Business Council, where we represent more than 20 businesses and organizations who are focused on the advanced energy economy. Wind, solar, energy efficiency, chambers, even the U.S. Army is a member of our coalition. I wanted to commend you, commissioners, for having this open dialogue and thinking about what the steps are as you begin to experience interest in Sedgwick County for wind and solar. I wanted to also invite you to consider the Climate and Energy Project as an organization you can turn to for fact-based information that is not based on anti-science rhetoric that unfortunately we've been hearing a lot about as it relates to wind farms in Kansas of late. Kansas has an opportunity to be a leader in the clean energy economy. We've got more than 10 years experience across the state with 40 wind farms. We're generating 6,000 megawatts of wind in Kansas, and 36% of our energy use in Kansas today comes from wind power. We've experienced exponential financial benefits as a state, more than $10 billion in capital investment from wind development, thousands of jobs. Many of those jobs are transient. They come when the wind farm is being built, but then you have permanent jobs for operation and maintenance following the construction phase of the wind farms. Kansas is fortunate that we have a top 5 wind resource, but we also have a top 5 solar resource. More and more, we're seeing the price of solar come down and an opportunity for Kansas to be a leader in solar, just as we have been in wind. I want to touch on just a couple of things that have been said and let you know that I'm actually from Reno County. I live in Hutchinson, so I've been intimately involved personally in the conditional use process that they've gone through for the Pretty Prairie Wind Farm that was mentioned earlier. I'm happy to discuss that with you, happy to provide you with some information. Generally, what I would say, though, is with all of the wind farms that we've seen across the state for the last decade, conditional use permits have worked well for some. It's a process, as you described it, that's very well thought out. It's something that can set the kinds of things that you're interested in. But it's also, we've seen moratoriums halt wind development. And I'll wrap up by saying, no, the Pretty Prairie Wind Farm isn't going to use Siemens turbines. But Siemens is a huge employer of this region, and I know that they employ a lot of people who live in Sedgwick County. And even the thought of stopping wind development can have a chilling effect on the industry. So I hope that you'll consider that as you think about your deliberations. I do have some information about Kansas's current energy profile that I'm happy to leave if that's something you'd be interested in looking at, but thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Matt Graham.
Hello, I'm Matt Graham, Sedgwick County resident. I came here mostly tonight to learn a little bit about what was going on and which way I felt on this particular project. In full disclosure, I myself have solar panels on my home, and I did try to put up a wind turbine in my yard. Come to find out I can do it, but the payout on how much that would work for a small turbine and the maintenance on it wasn't worth it. That being said, I know there's always a little backlash to, it's right near Cheney Lake. I've raised my family on Cheney Lake. We camped out there every weekend during the summer for the past 30 years. It's a fantastic park, a fantastic lake. I also had the opportunity to camp at Turner State Falls in Oklahoma. Now, Turner State Falls, I believe, is in the Wichita Mountains, if I'm correct. And they have a wind farm right there at Turner Falls. Now, I've camped there before the wind farm, and I've camped there after the wind farm. I guess I'm missing what the problem is with the wind farm near the park. It doesn't take away from it. It doesn't distract from it. I did notice that at night, one night, I could hear a gentle whoosh. And I thought to myself, what is that sound? It was just very, very faint. And come to find out, I got looking, it was from the turbine, but you had to be right there, and it had to be perfectly quiet to even begin to hear it. So I know there's always that not in my backyard attitude anytime there's a new development. But looking at the current wind farms that are out there, there's usually a lot of back kick when they're first getting ready to build them. Once they're there, I think most people have come to accept that they're not near as bad as what they thought they would be. I know there's wildlife effect, but wildlife affects wildlife. You know, cats kill more than wind turbines kill migrating birds, etc. So I would just like to voice my support for the conditional use permit process, because I think that covers everybody's concerns. Neighbors get a pitch in, they get a say, have their say on whether that it should exist or not. It allows landowners the way to use their land to turn a profit how they want within reason. If we try to restrict landowners to say you can't have a wind turbine farm on your land, we're stopping how they can generate revenue with their land, and I think encroaching on their rights. So I would just like to say I support the conditional use permit for Sedgwick County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. I accidentally skipped over Mr. Darrell Hart.
Hi, thank you. I'm Darrell Hart. I live here in Wichita. And first I would say that I also support of the various options you have here. I think the conditional use. I support the conditional use option. Can you hear? Okay, thanks. One thing I would point out is the economics of this. Right now, we're at what the industry is calling a coal cost crossover point. And around the country, coal is now an economic threat when it comes to energy sources compared to other energy sources available. That translates to 74% of the coal-fired power plants now are actually not competitive any longer. They actually cost more than new wind would cost. To keep those old plants running would cost more. So I just urge this panel, if you settle on one of the options that discourage wind and solar, you're going to be saddling this region and your constituents and businesses with higher cost for dirty fuel. Thanks.
Lonnie Wright is our next speaker.
I'm all for renewables, but I wonder if this relatively new industries has matured enough to be located in more populous areas. So I would like to ask our Environmental Resources Director, Susan Arrowine, if she feels in the next 5 years we'll learn more about the risks and the new technologies to mitigate those, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Susan Erlewine with Sedgwick County Environmental. And I'm all for renewable energy as well. What we're discussing here is the placement of where that renewable energy should go and how it impacts the area around it. So that's why we're talking zoning and conditional use permits to see should the county put in any additional requirements than what might already be in a conditional use permit to determine what fits our lifestyles the best. You mentioned population. Our cities are growing and expanding out. Will this affect them? What will their input be on where these facilities are placed? So we're not saying no, we're saying what requirements should there be for the best locations. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Bill Wentz.
This microphone's about right for me. My name is Bill Wentz. I'm a lifetime resident of Sedgwick County, except for a couple of years in the military and a couple of years at KU. I'm a retired professor of engineering at Wichita State. My area of expertise is in energy conversion from 50 years ago. I've been involved in wind research since 1985, and some of the research that we did at Wichita State, sponsored by NASA and Department of Energy, is showing up on the new turbines that are coming into production and in use now. Wind turbines, we had 3 billion people in the world when I graduated high school. $6 billion at year 2000, 1950 to 2000. We're headed toward $9 billion by 2050. It's imperative that we learn how to meet our energy needs without destroying the planet. It is crucial. I'll tell you that the young people are getting it from the elementary schools. Birds. Several years ago, I looked up and found that the president of the National Audubon Society gave testimony yes, he said, wind turbines can kill birds as the birds fly through. But he also said far, far more birds are killed by coal plants, mining, processing, burning, than ever will be killed by wind turbines. I'm not a biologist, but Kansas State University did a study before they opened the Elk River wind farm out in the Flint Hills. They were looking at the prairie chickens. They did a study before the wind farm went in. They did a study a couple of years later. There were more prairie chickens after the wind turbines came in than before. Now, that doesn't mean that wind turbines attract prairie chickens, but as secondary, the point is that it can be overrated in terms of what happens. Nebraska, University of Nebraska, a recent study, similar conclusion. They looked for the effect of wind turbines on the bird population and found it was much insignificant effect. The more profound effects had to do with how much grass there was and other kinds of cover. So I would urge you, 30 seconds, okay. Out here in the parking lot, I have an all-electric car. My car is powered by solar energy from Westar's new solar farm. When it opened up the first month, I got 200 kilowatts from my share of the solar array, and that's 200 kilowatt hours. That's what it takes to power my car for 30 days. The future is here. Don't fall backward. Wind and solar are the most economic, clean source of energy we have today. It's time for that. Thank you.
Hi. Can you hear me? Yep. My name is Ken Lockwood. I'm from Cheney, Kansas, used to be called St. Joe Road. I own and operate Eagle Valley Raptor Center. I've been a bird of prey rehabber for 22 years, including eagles. And I, too, am in favor of wind energy, but what I'm not in favor of is the placement. I looked at the study that they had in the Hutchinson News, and they said that they did a 2-week study, and they saw 22 eagles, a few hawks, a few owls, and some few bats. Well, when did they do the study? And this is their report. Did I cut out? If anybody's ever been to Cheney Lake in the wintertime, and I have, there's been times when there's been 200 to 300 bald eagles at one day out there at the lake. When an eagle flies, they're constantly looking down for food. And they don't actually have to run into the blades to get killed or to hit or injured. What happens is those blades sometimes can get to going to about 200 to 300 miles an hour. And it creates a vortex that sucks them in. Bats, for example. Now bats, the average bat when it comes out at night eats thousands and thousands of mosquitoes. How many of you here would rather have a few bats or thousands of mosquitoes when you go out to the lake that carry diseases? And what happens to the bats is that vortex that these blades make causes their lungs to explode. The transmissions lines in the bottom affects ground nesting birds like burrowing owls, or not burrowing owls, or the long-eared owl. And I don't like getting eagles. They're very expensive to rehab even if they're able to. I take them to K-State and I spend an average of $1,000 each bird, and that's not including the food that I have to feed it for the next 3 months. Now, the one thing that I would like to bring up is that not only do these birds mean a lot, especially the bald eagle, to our country, but it means a lot to our military. And I'd like to end what I've got to say on a story. Several years ago, I had a guy named Harold Roberts. He's from Cassidy, Kansas. He was 94 years old, and he flew, it was either a B-17 or B-29, I can't remember, over Germany. And he sat down and told me stories that were unbelievable. His daughters had brought him to my place because he had never seen a live bald eagle. When we went into the pen with my eagle, I have a bald eagle named Wazoo, if any of you have been to my place. He's been with me for 22 years, and he likes to take pictures with you. There's something mentally wrong with him. Well, anyways, Mr. Roberts stood next to this eagle and turned around and gave one of the most slowest, most awesome salute I'd ever seen. And it brought tears to my eyes. And I said, Mr. Roberts, why did you do that? He goes, that's why I fought for my country. So any of you that live in this area, if you see an eagle that's injured, I want you to call me, because I will report it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Amy Brown.
First and foremost, thank you for putting your moratorium in effect to explore the effects and the impacts on industrial wind facilities and people. In December of 2017, I would have said, yes, wind energy, we must have it, we need it, we have to do it. Over the course of the last 18 months, my family has learned that we have the opportunity to live with 9 turbines within a mile of us. The closest turbine will be 2,000 feet out my west window of my home. I'm not anti-wind. I'm not a knot in my backyard. I'm a person that is facing having my family's life permanently altered by the impacts of improper siting. I've sat under the turbines. I've listened to the sound. I've gone to the wind farm when it's been perfectly peaceful and quiet. I've gone to the wind farm when it has sounded like you are living under a jet plane. I've talked to the people that are impacted. This is not about anti or pro-wind. This is about protecting my family and the families that chose to live in rural Sedgwick County. That said, if you continue down the conditional use permit process, as our county has, you will end up with a 22-page document that is inadequate. We have the privilege of working with a reputable developer. They will only answer the specific criteria that you put in your conditional use permit. No more, no less. This document has 9 pages dedicated to wildlife, half a page dedicated to fire control. There is not one single sentence in this document related to shadow flicker, noise. It's inadequate. It's laughable that our county is having a public hearing over a 22-page document that does not take into consideration anything related to the impacts on the health of our family. On March 20th, the developer submitted additional information, not 14 days from our public hearing. They submitted a shadow flicker analysis. I've spent 48 hours with this document. I found numerous errors in this document. There are 10 homes that would be facing over 30 hours of shadow flicker, with the most significant with 68 hours. No one should have to live with the strobe light in and out of their home. The acoustic analysis is based on an annualized LEQ. There is no noise statute that is based on an annualized LEQ anywhere. It does not make sense to do over a year for sound monitoring. My family's faced with living with an inadequate process because our county didn't take the time to look at their zoning and to review it. I appreciate your time, and I would gladly answer any questions that anyone has for me.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Erica Mertz.
My name is Erica Mertz. I grew up in a small town I apologize, I'm not a public speaker, on the Sedgwick County-Reno County line. I am sorry, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not a public speaker. Anyway, at this point, the Reno County wind farm is affecting my brand new house. I just finished my house. I will have 6 turbines within a mile of my house. I will be affected by shadow flicker. I will be affected by the audible and inaudible low frequency sounds. If you look at that study, there are a multitude of houses on the Sedgwick County side that are being affected. Is this how you want us to be treated in Sedgwick County, that other counties' zoning regulations are affecting us? I think that, wind turbines, wind farms are great with proper siting, proper placement, that though individuals are able to speak for themselves, there should be proper setbacks. The low frequency audible noise, any individuals that are affected by those noises should grant, reason or access to that. There should be a lease in place. They should be aware of it prior to a wind facility affecting their ground. Had I known that somebody was going to put in a wind farm in my backyard, yes, it is the backyard speech, but it is affecting me and my young family. It's affecting the new development right next to me. There's 8 new plots right around my house. Moved out to this small community to raise my family because I did not want to be in Wichita. I wanted to enjoy the sunsets. I wanted to enjoy the birds chirping in my backyard. I don't know if I'm going to have that same reality that I've had. I'm going to have lights flickering. My house shadow is going to be in my house, and it's going to go zoom, 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 and it's going to hit my windows. Would you want to live next to that or have those shadows coming into your house? What about the property value? My brand new house, my property value, how much is that going to deplete? Who's going to buy my house when you compare my house to my exact house in another location? Would you pick mine versus that one because I have the wind farm next to me? I don't think so. I wouldn't. I would not choose this if I had another chance. So please, consider proper zoning. Consider placement, wind turbine placements. Minimum 1 mile. 1 mile is still affecting my house. Minimum 1 mile. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right. Since we're pushing about 7:30 right now, if we could hold our applause and move on to the next. Kristy Horsch, could you please come to the podium?
Hello, my name is Kristy Horsch, and I'm a resident of Reno County. I'm part of a vibrant, growing rural community situated at the Sedgwick-Reno County line. I'm here today in support of my neighbors. First, I would like to commend you for your thoughtful and proactive response to renewable energy. It is a great comfort to your constituents that you care enough to address the topic with research, fact, and protection if needed. In some communities, wind facilities are a blessing. In other communities, they are a burden. It is important to determine what the case will be in Sedgwick County. As you are aware, Reno County has a proposed industrial wind facility looming. I, as well as several people that are here tonight, have opposed are opposed to this project. Our reasons are clear. The proposed project is not properly cited and is not an economic benefit of our community. These are the two areas I recommend you focus on moving forward. First, economics. The county will be presented with a large economic impact number. It is extremely important to break this number down to determine the actual dollar amount that will go directly to the county. To do this, a thorough, unbiased net economic impact study must be completed. It was shocking to us that the large numbers promised to our county did not take into account the losses incurred to the project of this magnitude. Second, proper siting. This really is the key. I am not against renewable energy or progress. I think wind facilities have a place when properly sited. So what is proper siting? Proper siting is taking into account the community and project and determining if the project can move forward in a compatible manner with the health, safety, and well-being of the people. In my extensive research of third-party independent published studies from around the world, it is apparent that many of the current setbacks proposed are woefully inadequate to meet the requirement. Prior to the moratorium ending, it is my hope that Sedgwick County will determine how to define proper siting for the county. 1 mile setbacks from property lines, 45 decibel maximum sound, under 10 hours of shadow flicker per home per year. Once you answer questions like this, what is best for your county, based on research and community input from those who will be impacted and living in the shadow, please develop the zoning to support it. Ensure that the zoning is exhaustive in detail and comprehensive in scope. Please include a clause for property owners who lease with the company to be able to opt out of zoning requirements. As you can see, when proper siting is put into action through zoning, a wind facility can be a win-win. In our case, only 12% of homes in the footprint are participating. We do not have proper zoning, and in some areas, no zoning at all. If our county had enacted this kind of zoning, the other 87% would be protected and would not be filled with anxiety going into the public hearing next week. I strongly encourage you to attend the Reno County public hearing next Thursday. Please carefully listen to both sides. Listen with the knowledge that one side has so much to gain and the other side has so much that will be taken. I truly believe this hearing today should not be about if renewable energy should be a part of the future, but rather what is the best way to protect the people and county when renewable energy comes. The answer is simple: zoning. As you develop zoning, you will face blowback. Some will find it too restrictive and say that it will kill future projects. Remain strong. If properly siting turbines kills a project, if the net economic impact is a loss, the project does not meet the county's needs and should not be pursued. Thank you for your time. I pray for your strength and wisdom as you move forward.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Holger Meyer.
Good evening. My name is Holger Meyer. I'm a professor of physics at Wichita State University. I also grew up in Germany, and usually restrictions are more strict in Germany. For example, neonicotide pesticides that kill bees are still allowed here, but not in Germany. And there's many, many other examples. Typically, environmental regulations are much more strict in Germany. But nobody would have the proposal to require a 1 mile setback for a wind turbine. Many of my childhood friends and family members live much closer to wind turbines and large wind farms that have been around for much longer than here, and nobody has ever reported a negative impact. So I hear the, in part, very emotional testimonies, and I don't want to question anybody's individual account, but on a large scale, there does not seem to be a widespread impact based on my experience from many, many houses, people I know very well who live very close to wind farms that have been in operation for many, many years with the same very large turbines that are modern here now. So I would like to voice my strong support for option 1, as few restrictions as possible. The only thing I would like to suggest is that any application will be immediately answered with a thank you note for producing renewable energy and hence reducing our impact on fossil fuels. We've seen in Nebraska and in Mozambique the widespread flooding that climate change can cause. it is time to take this serious when I hear on national news statements that the impact of climate change is 50 or 75 years in the future. That is not just wrong, that is dangerous, and I would have a few other choice words for it. We have to encourage a very fast change away from any fossil fuels. It surprises me that there is no hearing like the one tonight when new pipelines in Cheney are being discussed. That is what is truly dangerous, not more wind and solar. So yes, there are valid trade-offs in siting, but we should not put any red tape at all. On the contrary, we should encourage immediate, large-scale renewable energy infrastructure projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Elizabeth Helton. Good evening. I would like to thank you guys for allowing to speak tonight, as I'm not a resident of Sedgwick County. I am a resident of Reno County. I've grown up on this Sedgwick County side of the line, and now I live on the other side. I am currently fighting for proper setbacks in my own county, and I would like to recommend that you guys also consider proper setbacks. I've done lots of research on the health effects of the wind turbines, including studies from Germany and Europe, which in most of them they have recommended a mile to a mile and a half setback. They also do say that further study is recommended as well, but that's just because it's such a new technology. Even though it's several years old, and time-wise, it's still relevantly new, and it takes time to observe the effects because it doesn't happen right away. So we have maps here. My mom has a map of the shadow flicker. It's presented by NextAir. It shows how it will affect the residents on the Sedgwick County side of the line. The distance from the turbine to the line is 551 feet, and the line is a road. So if you live on the west side of the road, you're Reno County. If you live on the east side of the road, you're Sedgwick County. So even if you live right on the line, the closest turbine to you, if you're not signed, is 2,000 feet. So you're still going to be affected by all of that. There are 14 turbines. I don't know if anyone's mentioned this already, but there are 14 turbines from 45th Street to 96 Highway all along that road. We also brought the map that NextAir has submitted in their CUP. It's the original map, so it's not the updated one, but there are, in my understanding, minor changes. So if anybody would like to look at that, we do have that map as well. Someone also mentioned that wind farms benefit the community, and I'm not going to argue that they don't, because they do benefit the community. I've noticed I have family who lives in the Kingman and the other county, I can't remember the name of it, that has put in the wind farms, and they have said that it has benefited them because they're a dying community. They're not as prosperous and growing as we are. If you look at our portion of Reno County, we're a very vast growing part of the county. And being a neighbor to Sedgwick County, I can vouch that that portion of Sedgwick County is also a very fast growing part of the county. I feel if you don't fight for proper setbacks, then you're going to disrupt the growth of that part of the county. So I highly consider that you guys consider proper setbacks. Thank you. Thank you. All right. You guys have been a very patient audience with us this evening. We're about halfway through. Our next speaker is Shirley Cooper, and then Christina Lenrine. I hope I got your name. You are on deck.
Good evening. I'm a simple woman, and I'm going to make a simple statement. Cheney Reservoir has been a place where Kansans have taken their families for generations to enjoy the peace and the beauty of nature. Wind turbines will mar that tranquility with their flashing red lights. Those lights will be doubled by the reflection in the reservoir, even from miles away. Thank you. Because the Cheney Basin is so flat, spoiling the beauty of the area. My husband is one of those Kansans I've mentioned. He grew up with his extended family in Cheney, and that's where he spent most of his childhood. When he had children, he brought them there to enjoy the nature. He's hunted there, he's boated there, he's fished there, and just recently he and I have purchased property there. We're invested in that community. We don't want Cheney to be spoiled by the wind turbines. I'm sure there are other sites, as many of you have already said, that are more suitable for these. Please help us keep Cheney pure and pristine and beautiful for generations to come. Help us keep our property values, and when we get down to practicalities, help us continue to live the lives that we have chosen and we've invested in. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Christina, your next presenter, and then Chelsea Wells, you're on deck.
Good evening. My name is Christina Unrein. I am a resident of Sedgwick County. I have family in Reno County, and we do also own property in Reno County. So my concerns are for both sides. I am so thankful that Sedgwick County is listening to us. I do have some maps I would like for you guys to have, which shows the effect of the shadow flicker on the Sedgwick County residents and the noise on the Sedgwick County residents. So, and these were submitted by NextEra from their study. I am a nurse, and briefly what I wanted to talk about was noise is noise. That's not our biggest concern. Yes, you're going to hear them. Yes, they sound like an airplane or a jet plane engine all the time. That is not the biggest concern with these. The biggest concern, and I don't know if anybody's heard, President Trump just released something yesterday about the vibrations in the ground. The biggest concern is the low frequency noise, infrasound and low frequency noise that these things create. And you can laugh, but this study is from Paris. It was presented last fall, and it does show that these low frequency vibrations cause thickening of the heart, the pericardium, the lungs, and it causes inflammation in the bodies. And this is based on studies, which there's done millions of studies because it is an issue in the work environment. Everybody who works with vibrations and noise, this has to be studied. And it does say that the only way to avoid this is to have larger setbacks. That's the only way to address the low frequency and infrasonic impacts. Most of the studies done, which are correct, there's a lot of studies that show there's no physical symptoms from these turbines. But these turbines have only been around in this area for a few years. There's been multiple studies done up north, and there's been multiple complaints from residents of health problems because of this. And the exposure is not immediate. The exposure is immediate, but the effects of the exposure are not immediate. 1 to 4 years, you start to have, can you imagine how continuous vibration around you all the time? That would drive me crazy. And this isn't something you can hear. This isn't something that the noise doesn't create this. It's the vibrations in the ground. 1 to 4 years, you have slight mood swings, indigestion, heartburn. 4 to 10 years, you can have chest pain, back pain, fungal and skin infections. And then greater than 10 years, you can have headaches, hemorrhages, ulcers, decreased vision, joint pain, muscle pain. And I just want to make sure this is an actual study released by 2 universities in Paris in November of 2018. So I'm not making this up. Thank you.
Thank you. Chelsea Wells, and then our next presenter will be Kathy Heiger.
My name is Chelsea Wells. I'm a Reno County resident. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns tonight. We live in a very special and unique community that is facing the devastation of an industrial wind facility in our backyard. Our Catholic school is at record high for enrollment. Our growth will be ended. On a 1-mile stretch on my road that I live on, I have counted 80 residents, adults and children. What are the consequences of a storm coming and the weather radar, our school at 170-ish students? What is the consequence if our weather radar cannot pick up that storm and our children are in harm's way? We are simply asking for our health and well-being and property to be protected. We are desperate for extensive review of the current zoning regulations. We need to make certain that our zoning regulations are scientifically supported and sufficient to protect the health of the residents of Reno County and Sedgwick County. Proper setback standards are intended to protect the people and their property. And what it comes down to at the very end of the day is what we feel as if money is the most important thing when it comes to a wind farm. There's no amount of money that would make me want to disturb the health and welfare of my neighbor. Thank you for your time.
All right, Kathy Heiger, I hope I got your name right. And then the next speaker will be Pat Pierotti. Pat, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your name.
My name is Catherine Heeger. I also live in Reno County. I can see the Sedgwick County line. About 10 years ago, our neighbors at the time erected a small residential-style turbine between our homes. It was 80 feet from our property line and 130 feet from our house. We helped him put it up. We thought it was a great idea. Within 2 days of it being functional, we asked him jokingly to take it down and stop it. We offered to pay the offset. It strobed the entire north and west sides of our home several hours a day. We had to move out of our bedrooms on the first floor and into the basement against the east side of the basement to get away from the sound. We had to adopt earplugs, sound machines, and as heavy a blackout curtain we could get on our north windows to stop the effect. Hilariously, the curtains and the blinds don't stop the effect. They switch up the pattern and the color. It ran for essentially 4 years, and in that time I was raising 2 babies, and we did not go outside. With the noise, the exhaustion, it was just too much to bear, and we would go to Cheney Lake. We would spend our entire week at Cheney Lake. And with the advent of this new project coming and being within 2 miles of the reservoir, where are we going to go? What are the people going to do? The shadow flicker from these 500-foot turbines can reach over a mile. The infrasound, or sound under 20 hertz, inaudible to the human ear, can be detected up to 7 miles away. What are the people going to do? We are not anti-wind. However, the financial impacts, the decommissioning, the massive depreciation in a period of short time. Just recently in Topeka for the Health Bill 2273, which unfortunately died on the table, they indicated that wind turbines depreciate to 20% after 7 years. How will that affect the tax credit that we can start getting at 11 years when the incentives wear off? Will we ever get our money back from that? The pilot payments, ours particular, I think is what, 27 over 30 years? The current area where we live in Reno County is massing and growing, and we are adding $1 million to the tax bracket every year. The CUP suggested by Pretty Prairie Wind will run our county into a deficit. I think there needs to be greater scrutiny to these contracts. I think there needs to be greater setbacks. If the setbacks are too restrictive to a wind project, the area is too populated. And that is all I've got to say tonight, and thank you.
Thank you. Pat, and can you please correct my pronunciation? Okay. And the next speaker will be Michelle Nichols.
Thank you for having me. I offer a breath of fresh air. I'm going to talk about solar. I'm an optometrist, and I have an office at Central and Mays Road, and I am a lifelong Sedgwick County resident. Raised my children here and plan to be buried in a cemetery here when the time comes. And my office is covered with solar panels. Sorry. And I am now generating, I have a 9,000 square foot office, and I'm generating 90% of all the electricity I use to run my office. And I looked up a few things to share with you when I came, and that's equivalent to not driving your car 500,000 miles. That's how much carbon I've helped to remove from the atmosphere in our beloved city and county. So with due respect to all of the comments about wind. I'd like to actually remind us that we live in this fantastic solar resource state. In Area 2, solar panels are silent. They have no flicker. They have no noise. This is not to speak in any way against wind. I am very much in favor of wind energy too, properly sited, which I think there seems to be a consensus that we all would like. So I'd like to put a plug in for solar, and I would like to see our state really push. The southwest portion of Kansas is in the Sun Belt. Many of us in Kansas don't even know that. Sun Belt like Texas. And so we have this great place to make green, carbon-free energy with solar panels, and I hope that we can find some sites for some solar farms that will be acceptable to people in addition to whatever we find that is fair to us all as citizens about the wind. So, great news for solar.
Thank you. Michelle Nichols, and then the next speaker will be Anthony Vaith.
Hello, my name is Michelle Nichols. I had no intention of speaking tonight, but here I am. I grew up in Sedgwick County. I now live on that Reno-Sedgwick border. My house is in Reno and my mailbox is in Sedgwick. I am totally not against green energy. I don't think any of the people who are opposed to the NextEra wind farm are. We are not unscientific people. My husband and I took a 127-year-old farmstead house that was going to be torn down and renewed it, and we live there now, and we've enjoyed it. We have a pair of great horned owls on our property. We have 9 chickens, a dog, and 3 cats out in the barn. Bees. We also have bees, beekeepers. These turbines will be going up less than a half a mile from my house, and amongst rural folks, that's next door. Half a mile or less. Last week on KSN, I heard people in Wichita upset about I believe the electric company putting up 100-foot towers near their property. I feel their pain. These turbines are 500 feet tall. And the Wichita people were upset about 100-foot tall, which I empathize with that. You can see turbine lights from our place. My husband and I decided a month or two ago, let's just go see where those things are at. And we drove and we drove and we drove south. Nearly an hour. You can see these lights from these down in Harper. We, being rural people, we thought we're just going to drive up to some people's driveways and ask them, because we're hearing both sides. Which way is it? Are these things a problem or are they not? So we just drove up in total strangers' driveways and started talking to them. What do you think? How do you feel? We hate the noise. The shadow flicker is terrible. The company doesn't always abide their side of the contract. And in order to get them to do anything, we have to sign gag orders so that we can't speak against it. These were just normal, regular people. We wanted to hear from the horse's mouth, people who are living there. The last lady we spoke to, bless her heart, she said, you can see my house is just a mess. It's because I want to move. I want to get out of here. I'm planning on going up to a little town called Mount Hope so I can get away from the wind turbines. And I said, honey, I'm sorry to tell you this, but that's where we're from. We live southwest of Mount Hope. And she said, oh, no, I thought I could go there to escape. And I said, I'm sorry, but they're coming up, they're trying to come up there too. So again, we're not against wind energy, just put them somewhere where it's not so densely populated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony, and then I apologize, Ronald or Randall Orich.
I also, like Michelle, didn't come to speak tonight, but I'm an engineer, graduated from K-State, spent my career at Boeing and Spirit Aerosystems, and when you hear something like this wind farm in Reno County and you start doing some of this digging that some of the people here have related, It reminds me of any time a consultant would come and say, hey, I got this great deal for you. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. There's a map, and I saw it some years ago, but there's a site, if you want to go Google it, Site Selection Magazine, that maps the wind in Kansas. Elk County, and you go out west, David Kirkbride, my high school teacher there, glad to see you're still kicking. Medicine Lodge is probably a good place for a wind farm because it's in deep purple on here, which I'm partial to, because it's way out west. And whoever was from Elk County, 2,500 people in Elk County, not 20,000, so there's not very many people. You know, this doesn't belong in Sedgwick County. One of the things I learned, I spent part of my time on a school board here in Renwick, and one of the things I learned is tax valuations, which is how schools get funded. Utilities and other regulators, and I don't know how this bill's been written, but are allowed to set the value of their property, like the energy plant out at Colwich. I don't know what it cost to replace it, but that wasn't the value it was set. So I would worry if I was in your shoes about how much, somebody mentioned it, how much tax base you're going to lose when the property value of that house goes from $500,000 to $300,000, and the person that sets that wind farm goes down 80% in 10 years by the time you get to tax it. It's probably not going to be the value you lost in the tax base. So think long and hard about where you put them, and they belong in places like Elk County. Not that I have anything against anybody from Elk County, but they belong in places like Elk County and Wallace County where you could throw a rock and couldn't hit anything because there's nothing out there except prairie and open spaces. That's where they belong. And I'm for green energy. I'm planning on putting solar panels. I have to go visit that optometrist, solar panels on my house to try and do my part. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Randall. Okay. And the next speaker will be Laura Lombard.
Well, I wasn't going to speak today either, but I signed the wrong sheet. So I have a farm on the Reno County, Sedgwick County line. We're on the east side, Reno's on the west, of course. So, you know, these people come way late and want to do something. We even have land where they want to put the electric poles 2 miles away from the county line. And they want to run some poles through our property and the neighbor's property. That value of that land 30 years from now has nothing to do with right now. Okay? Put a price on it for 40 years from now and see what you get. You know, as far as things, the way they're doing things, it's all by night, you know. It's real quick, just like any people that want to do something for themselves. They do it behind the back without confronting people and talking to people way ahead of time, and it's just not right, you know. We may put the electric pole on part of our land. We don't know yet. But like I say, I'm going to have to see those turbines a quarter mile away or less and be in our pasture and hear things that we shouldn't have to hear. That's why we buy land out in the nobody wants or nobody can afford it, because we want to do what we want. We don't want people to make us do things that they want to do because they want a little bit of money, or the money's going clear out of state, you know. That's foolish for Reno County doing that. You know, they're not getting much revenue out of all that because they don't see that part of the Reno County. That's the last part that gets worked on, way out the county line. You know, and I appreciate Sedgwick County for doing what they can to try to regulate things, you know. But say I want to put a house right a quarter mile from that. It's going to be the shits if I'd want to, because I'd have to look at that, you know, and I don't want to look at things like that. You know, I don't own the property next door, but anymore you have to buy what's next door to keep people away and from doing things, and that's not right. So it's to everybody's own choice. It's not the government's choice all the time, and that's what this world's getting into. I mean, our government's not always going to be around. The people will be. There's how many percent that are in the government? Not very many. So that's just what I feel about it. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Laura, and then our last speaker will be Homa Hariri.
All All right, my name is Laura Lombard. I am the Development Director of the Clean Energy Business Council. Dorothy Barnett mentioned our organization earlier. We are a program of the Climate Plus Energy Project, which is a statewide organization working on clean energy issues. I'm also happen to be a resident of Sedgwick County as well. The main point that I wanted to make tonight is we've heard, as the optometrist noted, a lot about wind. But a very different technology, of course, is solar. So I would ask the commissioners, when you are considering your policies, that you don't lump them together, that you look at wind as one and solar as the other, and create your policies around that, because they're very different technologies with very different impacts. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Homa, and I'm a resident of Sedgwick County, but I live in Wichita. I live near McConnell Air Force Base. And while I understand the concerns, and I'm perfectly confident that we can come up with some kind of compromise when it comes to the setbacks, but I'm not asking all the county commissioners to move McConnell because the noise from the jets bothers me. You know, every single night I have to actually hear the sound of real jets flying over my apartment, but I haven't asked the county to move it for my sake. And the other reality is that there are a lot of people within the city of Wichita. I don't know where it would be feasible to put a windmill within the city. Well, that's something to consider. Another thing I'll ask folks to consider, I heard a concern about the weather radar. How will we have people alerted about tornado warnings or something? Well, you know, the Storm Prediction Center down in Norman, Oklahoma, maybe we should ask them if there's a windmill nearby. I bet we could check that one out really quickly. And another suggestion I have, why don't we put some cameras or something near some of these wind farms? Let the public be the judge when it comes to the noise. I'm just honestly curious about this because I have a jet flying over my apartment. And as far as not being anti-wind, what is your solution other than a moratorium? Yes, we can optimize between setbacks versus power loss. If the wind farm is going to be literally hundreds of miles away from the place where the power is being delivered, when it's being transmitted over a long distance, that's a lot of power loss. So what is your solution? I really seriously hope we can optimize between the setback distance versus the power losses. And I agree with what Laura Lombard was saying earlier. Please do not lump wind in with solar. The other thing I wanted to mention, because I heard about Westar and the poles. Those residents have the poles literally in their driveways or about 10 feet from their walls. I wonder how many folks in this room were sitting at the hearings in Topeka when Representative Carmichael and Hoheisel and Warren and the others in Topeka on the bill this past week. I don't recall seeing the majority of the folks in this room over there. You want to show concern about the folks at Westar? Then go do that. But don't bring them into this when they had it far worse than anybody else talking up here did. Thank you.
All right. And I apologize, we have one more speaker, Julie Martin.
Thank you. I'm sorry I added my name a little late. I came from work, so thank you for letting me speak. I grew up in Sedgwick County, right at the Reno County-Sedgwick County line. I now live on the Reno County line renting while my husband and I were going to build a half a mile east of the Reno County line in Sedgwick County. If these wind turbines do end up going in Reno County, we will not be building, we'll be looking outside of Sedgwick County. Not only is Reno County going to lose property values if these wind turbines come in, Sedgwick County is going to lose a lot of people from building their new homes. Like someone else had said, that there is a addition going in around the Reno County, Sedgwick County line. I don't see very many of them being built if the wind turbines go in. I ask that setbacks be thought long and hard because of the noise, the flicker, and the red lights that we have to look at that are already several hundred miles away from us, but can still see. Thank you.
All right. That concludes the folks who have signed up for the public forum. I'll hand it back to Chairman Dennis.
Well, thank you very much, Kate. I appreciate it. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming tonight and sharing your perspective. On behalf of each of our Sedgwick County Commissioners, we truly did want to hear exactly what you had to say. We have not made any decisions. We have not taken a position for or against solar or wind energy. We need to do what is right for Sedgwick County and for our citizens there. I also want to thank the Sedgwick County Zoo for hosting us. This has been a very helpful and informative event. If you didn't speak tonight or if you have additional thoughts, you still have an opportunity to share them. Go online to sedgwickcounty.org, and we have a place that you can click at the top and leave your comments on that, and we will be reviewing each and every one of those. That online forum is active through Friday, April 26th. Once all of our public input is received, our next step in this process is for our planning department to file a draft amendment, and this should happen somewhere after the end of May. Or April, I'm sorry. Then the Planning Commission. We have 14 members of the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. They will hear a proposal in the June time frame. And finally, the commissioners will hear whatever the decisions that the MAPC makes in July. This will allow us to meet the moratorium deadline, which comes up on August the 12th. Again, on behalf of all of our Sedgwick County Commissioners, and we have a lot of staff here tonight because this issue impacts across our Sedgwick County. So I appreciate each and every one of our staff that have come tonight to listen to what has been said, because each and every one of them are going to have a significant impact in what we have done tonight. Again, thank you very much for coming. I sincerely appreciate all of your comments. Thank you.